Hello, so this is a lesson on parallel structure. So parallel structure is also known as parallelism, and it means a sentence construction which places equal grammatical constructions near each other or repeats identical grammatical patterns. So we're talking about repetition here. It's used to add emphasis, organization, or sometimes pacing to writing. Notice once you learn about parallelism and parallel structure, you'll notice that this sentence is not using parallel structure correctly. So I'm getting these notes from the AP Language and Composition Glossary of Literary and Rhetorical Devices from Yale Learning University. So parallelism is the overall structure. Parallel structure is the title. There are subsets within them. There are multiple types of parallel structure. For most classes, just being able to identify this as parallel structure or parallelism will be enough. However, as you go into more advanced courses, like in universities or advanced placement courses, you will need to have these terms that I'm going to give you to help you prepare. And they also will help you just in general identify what parallel structure looks like. So, anaphora is the repetition of a word, phrase, or clause at the beginning of two or more sentences or clauses in a row. It's a deliberate form of repetition to help make the writer's point more coherent. So, I came, I saw, I conquered. Veni vidi vici. That's the translation of the Roman that is thought to have been spoken by Julius Caesar. Notice it is a noun followed by a verb. A noun followed by a verb, noun followed by a verb. Well, technically it's a pronoun. I came, I saw, I conquered. So there's that one. That's the structure. Then in this one, we have a longer quote from I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So that repetition 4 times of 100 years later helps to give you the emphasis of how important this is for him and how big a gap this is. If he had just said, but 100 years later, the Negro's still not free, it's sadly crippled by the manacles, they live on a lonely island and we're still languished in the corners, it doesn't have that emphasis. By having the parallel structure or the parallelism, this anaphora of repeating, but 100 years later, 100 years later, 100 years later, 100 years later, it really helps the listener or the reader see how important this is. This is an emphasis, okay? So it's a deliberate repetition and emphasis for his message. And then Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death has the battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. So you'll notice these are all at the end instead of the beginning, okay? But we do have the form of the article the followed by a noun, the article the followed by a noun, and the article the followed by a noun. And it emphasizes that if you, even if you are not strong, it is not to the strong alone. Even if you are not strong, okay, it is, you can also be vigilant, you can be active, or you can just be brave. And that will make you fight this battle. That's how important this battle is. You must be vigilant, you must be active, you must be brave, even if you are not strong. Anyone else can participate and you must stand up to this. So that's anaphora, okay? The repetition of a word or clause at the beginning or in clauses in a row. So these are the clauses in a row. The next one is chiasmus. And chiasmus is when the same words are used twice in succession, but the second time the order of the words is reversed. So fair is foul, and foul is fair. Okay? So then when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Okay, so we've reversed those words. Okay, these are direct flips. You can have other ones have things that are a little bit tweaked, but still have that thing, that idea of reversing. So let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. And notice there's also let us and let us. Okay, so these are parallel structures as part of the never thing. So let us never negotiate out of fear. Let us never fear to negotiate. So this has out of and this has to, but the words are still reversed, and it's an important point. Okay, we shape our buildings, right? Shape our buildings, and afterwards our buildings shape us. Again, not an exact flip. It doesn't say we buildings our shape, but it is an opposite idea of when we build these buildings and later these buildings make us who we are. We shape our buildings shape us. And then John McCain's, we were elected to change Washington, okay? And then we let Washington change us. So that opposition there of these ideas. So again, it's still parallel structure, but this is different from anaphora. Anaphora is repetition of the same idea or a similar structure, and this is somewhat of a similar structure, but the idea are opposites. The words are reversed. Okay. And then there's antithesis. Antithesis is two opposite or contrasting words, phrases, or clauses, or even ideas with that parallel structure. So this is The Tale of Two Cities. This is the opening to The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And so you'll notice it's almost entirely this form of parallel structure. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Best and worst, same structure. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. Wisdom versus foolishness. It was the epic of belief, it was the epic of incredulity. Okay, belief versus incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. So light versus darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. So these are phrases. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Still going. It was. And then we switch to we had everything before us. We had nothing before us. So it's also a structure of we had everything and we had nothing. And then here we have we were all going to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. So again, this slightly breaks the structure because this is we were all going to and then a noun. And then this one is saying the other way. It's not exactly the same, but it is still part of this antithesis, this idea of opposites. Then here, for the fun of it, we have the Green Lantern who says in brightest day, in blackest night. These are opposites using parallel structure. So we have in followed by an adjective followed by a noun, and then in followed by an adjective followed by the opposite noun. So the opposite adjective, the opposite noun. Green Lantern. And then, of course, the clash. Should I stay or should I go? So we have the opposites with the should I structure, and then the opposite of stay versus go. And then, of course, you can sing along. I have also links that I will be sharing that have the information about where I got some of these examples from. Again, mostly the definitions are coming from the AP Language and Composition Glossary of Literary and Rhetorical Devices from Yale Learning U. So you can go to that link and you can find all of these and more, where you can get all of this information about parallel structure and parallelism. So hopefully that will have helped you understand that and be able to identify that a little easier. If you have questions, please let me know. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day.